The following video is rated R for language, so if you have a problem with profanity, please click the X on the tab of your browser and move on. Coming to paperback and e-readers in 2021, John Haynes, Taking Care of Business. The man who rules the world breaks on a brand new partner to help him take care of business in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Taking Care of Business in 2021 at online booksellers everywhere. A 19-year-old Arizona man was arrested for faking his own kidnapping because he did not want to go to work. Now, this 19-year-old Brandon Soles was alleged to have faked his own kidnapping by putting a rag in his mouth, tying his belt behind his back, and then throwing himself on the side of the road. And he waited for the police to find him on the side of the road, and he went to tell them this story that he had been kidnapped by two Manx men, allegedly because his father had hid some money in town. Now, when I take a critical examination of this 19-year-old Brandon Soles, I don't see an isolated incident. I see yet another beta male who fits the pattern and profile I talk about regarding the dysfunctional behavior of beta males in my book, The Man Crisis. And your Brandon Soles is one of these beta males who fits the chapter I talk about as related to the rose-colored reality that many of these beta males live in. Now, your Brandon Soles was a 19-year-old man who had a good job at the tire factory, but because he did not want to go to work at that job at the tire factory, he didn't think to just go and call out sick. No, he decided to show everybody how mentally ill he truly was by going out here and concocting this story about being kidnapped and thinking that this would get him out of going to work. But this is par for the course with your beta males, because your beta males do not live in the real world. No, your beta males live in a rose-colored reality that looks like our world, but is completely different from our world. And in that distorted world that they live in, they imagine these crazy ideas like trying to fake a kidnapping and think that people are going to believe that this story makes sense. But the only person this story would make sense to is your Brandon Soles, and that's because this came from his rose-colored imagination, and he's thinking that he can convince people to believe that somebody is going to want to kidnap him and leave him at the side of the road without any sort of evidence to back him up. He thinks that because he came up with this story, people are just going to believe him. But in the real world, people just don't sit here and believe whatever anybody says without doing an investigation. And law enforcement, after doing an investigation into this Brandon Soles and his story, realized that 2 and 2 weren't adding up, and they arrested him for filing that false police report and wasting the police officer's time with his nonsense. And it is completely nonsensical for them to have their time wasted by this clown who just did not want to go to work. Now, if a man does not want to go to work, he has two options. The first option is he can go out and call out sick, or he can go out here and quit his job. But this spoiled, rotten little brat did not want to take either of those two options, because both of those options required him to be a man, and they required him to take responsibility for his actions. And he didn't want to take responsibility for his actions. He wanted to go out here and play a childish game, thinking that people were going to go along with his childish game. But men in society do not go along with ridiculous childish games played by juvenile beta males. No, they hold juvenile beta males accountable for their irresponsible, reckless, and egregious behaviors. And that's what happened here when law enforcement found out that this story was a fraud. This Brandon Soles soon found himself arrested for filing those false police reports and false charges, and he also wound up getting terminated from that job. So your Brandon Soles does not have to worry about going to work tomorrow. No, he's soon going to have to worry about probably having to go to jail and having to deal with Tiny and Big Bubba, and he's probably going to have to worry about them turning that tight end into a wide receiver. That's probably what he's going to have to worry about now, because he's in a situation that is going to be worse than any day at the job, and his fears are going to be exacerbated because he's going to now have to worry about not dropping the soap in the shower room. But this is what happens to your beta males, because your beta males, they don't live in reality. They live in a rose-colored world, and because they live in a rose-colored world, they never think about the consequences of their actions, and they never think for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, and there is an equal and opposite response for every dysfunctional action a beta male participates in. And in this case, when a beta male goes out here and concocts a ridiculous story about getting kidnapped, the equal and opposite response from law enforcement is to arrest that individual. And when the employer, finds out about that whole story, they then terminate that employee because that employee does not appreciate the opportunity to work here. Now, I find it really silly that this guy did this, and I find it even sad that he did this, because many 19-year-old young men would be glad to have a job at a tire factory, a good, secure job at a tire factory at 19. That's the kind of job I wish I had at 19, because these are the kind of jobs that a guy could start his life with. But this beta male, he didn't appreciate the job that he had, and he threw that job away, and now he's got a record, and now he's going to also have a 6-lane highway in his backside due to going out here and making that false report. Because once Tiny and Bubba get a hold of him in that jail, they're going to turn that tight end into a wide receiver, and this man will be broken. Sadly, he'll have a record, a tarnished reputation, and he won't be able to get any more jobs after this. This is all what happens when you have the beta male out here. He's oftentimes short-term thinking, and because he short-term thinks, he never thinks about the long-term consequences of his actions, and because he does not think about the long-term consequences of his actions, what happens is he winds up making a mess of his life. And when I look at this 19-year-old Brandon Soles, I see yet another textbook beta male, like I described in my book, The Man Crisis. But in this case, he did not explode in a rage. What happened was he exploded and self-destructed and destroyed his life before it even got started. Because at 19 years old, this young man practically had everything going for him. I mean, he had a very good job at a tire factory, a job that many men out here would work until the last day they retired, and they would be going home with benefits. But this guy, he's not going home with anything, all because he got in his feelings about not wanting to go to work one day, and he decided, instead of him just calling out sick, he showed everybody how sick and depraved that he was. And when he showed everybody how sick and depraved that he was, he wound up destroying every aspect of his own life and destroyed every aspect of his whole career. So he destroyed everything he had going for him in just a few moments, all because he was feeling about the job and not thinking about his future. So this is what happens when you deal with a beta male. He reacts on his feelings and comes up with these stupid plans that fit his rose-colored reality, but don't understand there are consequences for these actions in the real world. And because they're not thinking about the consequences of their actions in the real world, they wind up destroying their lives. And then what happens years later is they want to blame others for making a mess of their life. But this guy did this to himself. I mean, this is ridiculous because, again, he had everything going for him and he derailed his own life, all because he didn't want to go to work. And what's really sad is here we are in a pandemic where 50% of the country is out of work, and he doesn't appreciate the job that he has, and he doesn't appreciate the opportunity to go out here and make a living. But this is, again, what happens with beta males. They don't appreciate anything, and that's why they wind up losing everything, because they come up with these crazy schemes thinking, oh, I can go out here and make it look like I'm kidnapped because I saw it on television, not understanding that in the real world, people are going to start asking critical questions. And when they ask critical questions, they're going to start to see that the story falls apart. But again, when I take that critical examination of this beta male, it is yet another incident in America's ongoing man crisis. And it shows me another case of another beta male who never got good male life skills, never got good male survival skills, because a man who gets good male life skills and survival skills understands that he needs to appreciate an opportunity to work at a job. You may not like that job, but you have to appreciate that opportunity to work there. And if this is not the job for you, you have two options. You can call out sick and then make some plans to try to go look for another job, or you can go out here and quit and look for another job. You don't come up with a convoluted scheme talking about, oh, somebody kidnapped me, because that's what little wimpy, cowardly males do. But men just come up with a plan saying, look, I'm gonna, even if I don't like this job, I'm gonna work it until I can find something better, or I'm just gonna, if it's just untenable, I'm gonna leave and try to find something better. Those are the two options that a man makes. But a man in crisis, he will come up with this scheme from the rose-colored world, believing that people are going to believe this ridiculous nonsense. And when they come out here and try to bring this nonsense into the real world, they wind up in a whole lot of trouble that winds up costing them their job and, the most important intangible, their freedom. That's what this beta male really wasn't thinking about in this situation. He wasn't understanding that when you go out here and file false police reports, you are putting your freedom at risk, and no man should put his freedom at risk because of his feelings, because your freedom is one of the most important intangibles. But sadly, this beta male took that for granted, and because he took it for granted, he didn't appreciate how good his life was. And now I guess when he's in jail, he'll be thinking about how good his life was as they're trading him in exchange for ramen noodles, Little Debbie snack cakes, and your Fritos chips. If you want to learn why dysfunctional individuals like this one go out here and participate in their dysfunctional behavior, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more men's issues videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, ISIS, All That Glitters. The goddess next door takes on a bikini-clad bank robber in this action-packed, all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, All That Glitters, paperback and Kindle Unlimited today.